and welcome back, everybody, to an impromptu, one-day early episode of Two Goalies, One Mic, episode 174, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room with over 300 beers to choose from at all of their locations. Make sure you get your hands on any of one of their 24 beers of Christmas from their advent calendar. I got one this year, and it was fantastic. Great for a gift for any friend or family member, or just a gift for yourself to get yourself a little boozed up because of a 10-game losing streak. And Terry Pegula addressing his team and telling you nothing's going to change. We're just going to be in this imminent hell for the rest of our lives. And, of course, Buffalo Logo Apparel. Make sure you check them out at buffalogo.com or at Buffalo on Instagram and Twitter, buffalogo.com, at Fatty Beer on Instagram and Twitter, fattybeer.com. I am Duane from Two Goalies on Mike, joined, as always, by my co-host, Connor Hurley, and one of our favorite guests in the program, Walt. You know him as Sabermetrics on Twitter, and, of course, from the Charging Buffalo Boys. I felt it was necessary to do an episode today with what was learned today from ownership. I guess we always ask to hear from Terry, and when we do, we don't want it's awful. So, Walt, I'm going to start with you since you're the guest of honor here. I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah, well, I definitely don't think we got good news out of Montreal today. I think a lot of people were kind of excited to hear that Terry Pegula was going to be speaking with hockey operations in Montreal, and I just don't think we got the news we wanted to hear, because it sounds like not much is going to change. He kind of gave everyone his vote of confidence, and that's just concerning after a 10-game losing streak. I think it just kind of shows like the standards we have here in Buffalo are so low that this is acceptable, and I think it just kind of shows how concerning the state of the Sabres is right now too. I just don't really think any of this is acceptable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And like I said, before I really get to my thoughts, I want to just let you guys, take control here, take the wheel and go, as the saying is. Hurls, your thoughts?
It was one of those tweets where my only initial response to it was, "Oh my God," because I thought it was a joke. I really thought it was one of those like Frank Seravelli tweets that he once made fun of a media member, and he got a lot of, or it was a player or something, I'm not sure. Oh, he wrote a story about Goudreau, and there was an issue with it, and like he caught a lot of flack for it. So I had to make sure it was him that was tweeting it, because he is a well-respected media member. That was my reaction to it. I honestly thought it was satire. It was like so like predictable, I guess you could say, in a really, really depressing sense, that Terry flew all the way to Montreal just to say what we were all thinking would actually happen, but couldn't imagine actually happening, given that the Sabres are winless in 10 straight games. That he said that the solution is within this room. Nothing is going to change, and we believe in you. I think it's shocking to see that, but at the same time, like I said, it's not too uncommon from what all of us already know about this franchise, in that he doesn't care as much about the Sabres as he does about the Bills. He doesn't put as much money or as much time and effort into the Sabres as he does about the Bills, because he doesn't care as much about the Sabres as he does about the Bills. So, especially coming off when the Lions and Bills were playing at the exact same times as the Sabres and Maple Leafs last night, a lot of people, I'm sure, weren't even watching the Sabres, given how big of a game that was for the Bills. But I specifically requested our bar put the Sabres game on so that I was able to follow along with both. And it was just another predictable result. You get up 3-1, and they panic, and they blow a lead in 3 minutes, and then here we are talking about winless in 10 straight. So it's obviously really disappointing. And I guess the depressing part is it is shocking, but it's not that surprising.
Were we duped by Terry Pegula all those years ago when he bought the team? Just like we've heard you both say like how much he does genuinely cares more about the Bills than the Sabres. Were we just duped? Like, this guy cried sitting next to Gilbert Perreault, and I know there's been a lot of stuff that we can point to as the reasons why we are in the situation we are. Some we're more comfortable talking about than others. And I mean, honestly, I think enough time has passed. Like, I feel I'm saying this with all due respect. I feel genuinely terrible about, his wife and what she's been through. But before all that happened, you had someone in place that wasn't remotely qualified to run an NHL franchise. And that led to a lot of these problems. You had a guy in place that was not just respected by your city and your franchise, but also respected league wide. And you ran him out of town, essentially. You haven't really brought anybody else to replace that hole you left with him. And instead, you just put people you felt comfortable with or you felt like you could trust to make the decisions for the future of your franchise. And it's just honestly just blew up in your face in every way possible. So were we duped by Terry Pegula is I guess what I'm asking.
No, I really don't believe that. I think his love for the team is genuine. I think he bought the team for the right reasons in 2011. Sabres, there's an account on Twitter, Sabres Fun Stats, and he tweeted out the video in 2011 of the crowd chanting Terry's name and signs hanging from the 300 level. In Terry we trust. His video is Gilbert Perreault dropping the puck. It was really funny. I tweeted it to Walt. It was getting to the Atlanta Thrashers, so that tells you how long ago it was. No, I do think he had a genuine love for the team, and I still think he does. But he is also a billionaire. He is not a hockey operations guy as much as he thinks he is. He clearly didn't know anything about football, and after hiring Rex Ryan, which I think we forget about, he put his trust, thankfully, in Sean McDermott to turn this franchise around. And they did. Brandon Beane did. They got relatively lucky with Josh Allen turning into what he turned into. But now the Bills are in a really good spot, and they will be in a good spot as long as Josh Allen exists. But no, I think a combination of really, really bad roster decisions. They didn't have a Josh Allen and Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel is not Josh Allen. If they got Connor McDavid, they would have had a Josh Allen and Connor McDavid. But the ping pong balls didn't go our way, unfortunately. So a combination of a few pieces of bad luck and Terry, I think, being overconfident in his hockey sense, have led us to where we are. Winning would have solved all of this. We would be saying nothing about Terry Pegula as owner of the Sabres if they had made it to the playoffs in one of these seasons. Let's say they'd broken the drought at the end of 2023. But they didn't, and they haven't yet. And we will always go back to this as these winless streaks start to pile up. So to answer your question, no, I don't think we were duped. But just like the Jets, just like any other losing franchise, this is what's going to happen as you continue to lose.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. The only thing I will say in regards to the video that, they're a friend of the program too, Sabres Fun Stats. Like they constantly support us, and I tried our best to always support them. The Sabres weren't for sale actively when Terry Pegula bought this team. He went out of his way to buy the team. Like Tom Golisano was not shopping the Buffalo Sabres, but I mean, I guess in that old Godfather phrase, like saying, he made an offer he couldn't refuse. Not that the franchise was in like any better. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. Under Tom Golisano, we had made the playoffs how many times under his leadership, but we all know what happened with Briere and Drury and why that happened. It's for very similar reasons of why we're dealing with this when he has his, internal salary caps. For that, like I can give credit for Terry to step in and buy the team, but he was also, Tom Golisano wasn't actively shopping the team, and he was adamant, no matter who he was selling it to, that the team was going to stay in Buffalo. So if the reality of it all is, and I think he built in a clause with this, like is that true? If he built a clause with Terry, if he ever sold the team, that they would have to stay in Buffalo? Or is that just, I'm not so sure about the wording of that, but I don't give Terry all that much credit because it's not like the team was in danger of leaving under Tom Golisano.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think when he took over the team, I thought his intentions were good. It did seem like he was willing to spend a lot of money. I just think he's someone that kind of almost got unlucky to start off with, and then kind of got misguided, and it kind of just led to a free fall. And now it just doesn't seem like he trusts like anyone in the hockey world, which is definitely a bad thing, because I think this franchise definitely needs guidance to work its way out. But I think that's kind of the huge difference between building an NFL team and building an NHL team. I think you need more consistency with an NHL team. Definitely need a lot more detail. I mean, because you got 12 forwards, you got 6 defensemen and a goalie, and they're all playing pretty similar amount of ice time versus the NFL, where you kind of just need a quarterback and then everything else falls in place after that. So I just don't think he's a detailed enough owner to kind of work his way through having to go through multiple GMs, multiple coaches, just having to go through multiple iterations of trying to build a team. It just seems like he's failed that so many times. And I really think he kind of needs to reset the clock back to back when he hired Pat LaFontaine, like back during that era, where it seemed like he kind of wanted to set a vision, wanted to put high-end pieces in place to guide this franchise. Because that's kind of what the Bills have done. I mean, the Bills have hired some of the top scouts in the league after hiring Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. They built kind of an elite front office, I feel like, in Buffalo. Obviously, we have a pretty good analytics department, but everything else just kind of seems so scattered, and it doesn't really just doesn't really seem organized. And I think that's kind of been the theme of the Sabres front office the past decade or so.
Yeah, I mean, this meeting today felt a little bit representative of what we've talked about with his stubbornness to hire a director of hockey operations, right? Like, of course, that didn't work out with Pat LaFontaine for a variety of different reasons. There seems to be a little bit of sketchiness that went on there with a great player of the franchise who was well respected throughout the league and also within the Buffalo community. He was kind of pushed out. We've talked so many times with Mike Harrington, with so many other people, that he refuses to do it, which when you're the Buffalo Sabres at this point, the refusal to do anything just doesn't make sense to me. Like, he clearly wants the team to be good. He doesn't want people saying, sell the team, Terry. That they're the joke of all 4 major professional sports leagues, that they're the equivalent of the New York Jets and the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Charlotte Hornets and the Oakland A's. Like, nobody wants that as an owner. And clearly, I do believe it's a team that he's cared about and that he's liked since he was a kid. You don't just cry when meeting Gilbert Perreault. That's a sicko mindset. Like, nobody cries when meeting Gilbert Perreault. My dad would, but my dad's had season tickets to the team since 1970. So I do believe he cares. He's just made a series of wrong moves. And as much as we can like second guess the Jack Eichel decision with the surgery and everything else, he requested a trade before that surgery thing ever even was a thing. He wanted out because this organization wasn't winning. It was dysfunctional. He didn't want to be here because his first 3 to 4 seasons didn't go that well for him. So yeah, that's unfortunate. And like I said, had the ping pong ball gone the other way and Connor McDavid was on this team from 2015 on, who knows if he would still be here? Who knows if they would have managed that correctly? They would have made the playoffs. I guarantee Connor McDavid would have led this team to the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure.
Without question. So I mean, they actively tanked to get Connor McDavid, and you saw Tim Murray's reaction to not getting him. He was obsessed with Connor McDavid, as he should have been, because I do believe he's going to go down as the greatest player in NHL history, if not 2 or 3. So there's a bit of unluckiness that happened with that. But that's where this franchise is. 9.5 years later. It is arguably in a worse place than it was during the tank years, which is truly saying something.
I do want to bring this quote up here from Josh Dracker. Sabres had 13 hits last night. 13. Toronto, which is not known to be the most physical team in the NHL, had 37 hits. That is 3 times the amount of hits. Like, yeah. I mean, are we going to, like, watching that game, was anyone honestly comfortable when they were up 3-1?
I mean,
no.
I think after the Colorado game, nobody will be any lead for the rest of the season.
And like, let's be real. Like, Devin Levi played fantastic. He made a lot of huge saves.
Again, wasn't his fault.
Yeah, I watched, like, again, Bill's game was on. I was watching both. I was also doing some Christmas shopping in between, just trying to get as much done as I could on my day off. And I'm like, watching the goals, that one was really wonky. And then just a tip here, Tavares left alone in the slot. Nobody stepped up on him. Like where is the drive and the passion? And, you know, I'm going to flat out say his name. Almost 2 weeks ago, I spoke to Brad May after a veterans event, and he said it, man. Like, he goes, I know that, like, the times have changed, and, you know, the style of hockey is vastly different from when I played. But the one thing that should stay constant is just the willingness to skate through a wall for each other and doing whatever it takes to win. And then he quoted Shorzy, the show Shorzy, goes, they don't hate losing enough. Like, you have to hate to lose so much, more than you want to win. And he says he just doesn't see it in this group. And they prove it night in and night out. And I mean, do you guys agree with that sentiment? Do this team just not hate losing enough? And that's coming from a guy who played a lot of games in the NHL and has a Stanley Cup and knows what it takes to win one. And went on plenty of long playoff runs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does seem interesting how I just think all the quotes from this team at the end of a big loss, it just seems so, like, I know there's not much they can say, but it's just like you expect when they go out there the next day, or next game, just for them just to play harder, try harder, look like they care. Like, I know the words that come out of their mouth and the pressers don't mean it all. I think they're playing the ice matters more. And we just haven't seen that. I thought the one chance we had to see that was after that Colorado game where they blew that 4-goal lead. I thought that would kind of be a turning point for them on the season. And they just kind of let that game continue to snowball, and they've been playing worse ever since that game. So, yeah, I just don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. But I think I just have a feeling like these players have to know that the Sabres have like $8 million worth of cap space. They have to know that their off season, they kind of just brought in fourth liners and didn't bring in like top line guys. Like, they have to know as well that it doesn't seem like the ownership or this franchise really cares about building a winner around them. So I think it kind of just gives that vibe in the organization that winning isn't really a priority right now.
Yeah, I can't blame the players either, especially with what they have to say after these games. I don't believe they're mailing it in. I don't believe that they're not trying. Alex Tuck yesterday summed it up pretty well. He says it's a pretty shitty feeling in the room right now. And then he said something that they've said a lot after these losses, that we didn't stick to our details when they were up 3-1, and then they lost the lead in a span of 3 to 4 minutes. And to me, that just sounds so insane as an NHL player, that when you hold a lead, especially in a hockey game, like, you can switch to a system in the NHL. The New Jersey Devils did it for a year. You don't have to play a trap, but you can play relatively responsible enough that you can limit chances on the other end. And also, with the amount of skill that's on this team, you can still get high danger scoring chances in the offensive end too. In the second and third period last night, I read a stat earlier today, they were outchanced 19-7 in high danger chances in a time where you're either down or you're trying to come back. They're not sustaining any level of offensive creation while also not being responsible in their own end. The goaltending is not the problem, which is crazy to say. And I feel like we're flip-flopping from 2022 to 2023 when that was an issue and they didn't get enough saves. Last year, the goaltending wasn't great until UPL finally picked it up and they weren't getting enough goals. And now they're not scoring enough. They're not playing well in front of their own end. And they're relying on UPL and Levi in this case to make them saves in these high danger chance situations to the point where it's just not good enough. And it's a larger point, but it goes back to the roster. It goes back to Kevin Adams not spending to the cap. It goes back to an internal cap being in place that we all knew was in place over the summer. So, yeah, it's a myriad of different issues, and it's not just going to fix itself. I'll sound crazy to say this because I keep looking at the standings and I expect it to be worse than it is. But when you look at the wild card standings, they are somehow still 6 points out of a wild card spot. I'm an eternal optimist when it comes to hockey specifically, but let's say you beat the Canadiens tomorrow night, which are one of the other worst teams in the league. And then you have the Leafs at home on Friday, which is going to be an amazing atmosphere. They usually play relatively well in that atmosphere. You put 2 in a row together, and after a 10-game winless streak, they somehow could be back in it. And that's all it will take. All of us will stop talking. All of us will stop complaining. We'll stop talking about Terry. That's all it's going to take. I know none of us have the confidence for them to actually do it. But given how bad the Eastern Conference is this season, it really will take 2 games to end this hellscape that they're in right now. And that gives me at least a tiny bit of hope.
Yeah. I know I see like a lot of too, like ever since that news dropped about from Frank Seravelli, to your point, Connor, like I actually went and kind of looked like, make sure that wasn't a fake account. Like somebody screwed.
That was my initial reaction.
Yeah.
Like, why did you fly to Dallas and from Dallas to Montreal to just say that?
Detroit, yeah.
Or sorry, Detroit. I thought it was Dallas. I'm sorry. But regardless, still, like you went from Detroit. Of course he was in Detroit. We all know where he was before. No doubt. But you could have did that over a fucking Zoom call, bro. Like we're sitting here expecting changes like Elliot Friedman, hinted towards how he felt. And not only do you express your confidence in Kevin, again, this is not on Lindy, but in Kevin, but you say that I have faith in you guys while they're in the midst of a 10-game losing streak, by the way.
Winless
Point.
Winless streak, not losing streak.
Fuck off. It's a losing streak.
Pierre LeBron.
I don't shut up. It's a losing streak, Connor. They haven't won. Don't say winless. It's a losing streak. They're a bunch of fucking losers. Stop. Losers who haven't won in almost 3 weeks. Losers. Stop. Don't talk over me.
Technicality.
Fuck your technicalities. You're a bunch of losers that haven't won in like 3 weeks. And we don't have enough fingers between all 3 of us to count the amount of times we could point to a single moment like they gave up there, they didn't, the amount of times, we needed more effort. How many fucking times do I got to hear about effort in a post-game interview? How many more times do we have to hear about effort from a player or Lindy? Like, it's effort. Like, it's going out there and doing it. Just going out and skating your ass off, skating your balls off for 60 minutes. That shouldn't be something that needs to be taught. Like, you guys are professional hockey players. Were these guys paid too early, paid big too early in their career, and they just not give a fuck? Like, are they not willing to stand in front of shots, go to the net enough, win a battle behind the net or along the boards? How many times can we count where this team has just given up or not done enough or not willing to do those things that Brad May told me about to go win a fucking hockey game? Sorry for all the swearing, but it's true. And you go into that locker room or wherever he met them, at the hotel, wherever, and you say, I have confidence in you guys. The solutions are where is it, Terry? Because you have a 19-year-old Zach Benson over here, a 20-year-old Yuri Kulik over here, both of which should still honestly not be in the NHL. You have an assistant captain who, for whatever reason, can't find his game now for over a year. Another assistant captain talking about not enough effort. Your captain hasn't played in almost 2 weeks. Like, where is the answer? Where's the solution in that room? Because I don't know where it is. Is it Jason Zucker, the guy who's been here for 6 months? Like, Jason Zucker, is that the answer? Where is it? Point to me where the solution is, Terry, because I don't think it's in that room, and I've been saying it since the fucking offseason, and I was told by so many people that you're wrong. Oh, this team is built. They're going to play a brand of hockey. They're going to make the playoffs, and make no mistake. I bought in a couple times this year, but I was one of the few, not to put myself on any pedestal. I was maybe not few, but I don't think they're deep enough. I don't think they did enough. We paid a second-round pick for Beck Malenstein. We traded for McLeod, which I still think was a good deal. I was hesitant about it at first, but to Mike Carrington's point in the press conference, you don't have to pay. Like to your point, Walt, You have all this cap space, even more cap space next year. Like, my throat hurts. My chest hurts from yelling. So let you guys take over for a minute while I rest.
My voice hurts from the game yesterday. The Bills game, mind you. But yeah, I mean, I think we all know the problem. We knew the problem going into the season. And when they did beat the Sharks to go on that 3-game win streak in California, and they were 11-9-1, third place in the Atlantic, it was so foreign to us this early in the season. So it did bring a certain level of optimism. And I really do try to look at each team in the prism of each season, right? Like, this is a new group compared to last year. There are new pieces. There is a new head coach. But the thing I keep going back to is that Lindy, without question, I know he's being probably a good sport because he got the opportunity to come back in. He absolutely did not get his choice of assistant coaches. The fact that Marty Wolford is still on the bench, the defense is playing as they are. The fact that Seth Appert was this gift-wrapped promotion within the organization to now run the power play, the league's worst power play, mind you. There's a stretch now, I think, that they're 1 for 53 for 65% of the season. There was a stretch where they were actually pretty good. I think it was like 7 for 20 when they were out here in California. But that's one of the main reasons this team is not good, is that the power play is horrible. It is absolutely horrible, and they have no idea what they're doing. And that speaks to Terry not wanting to spend for other assistant coaches, Lindy not having full control over what he wanted to do, a la Sean McDermott. And it's led to this situation where you have inexperience in every part of your team, not only on the roster, not only on the bench, not only in the GM room, also in the ownership suite. So, yeah, it's representative of a larger problem, and this is where we are.
So I could use a Diet Coke, Diet Captain and Coke at this point, any alcohol to solve these issues. Walt, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, well, it's just such a tough spot for this organization to be in right now. And I don't really know if there's any really quick solution to this. I think it's going to take probably years to kind of work their way out of kind of like the failure of how this team was built. And I think that's really a lot of the problems we've seen the last 2 seasons. I think a lack of talent can kind of show up in a lot of ways. And I think for a lot of people, they may think it's just a lack of effort level with this team or whatnot, or the lack of lack of being able to hang on to leads. But I really think it all boils down to this team just not being talented enough. And I think it was pretty apparent this offseason, heading into the season, that they didn't add enough talent. I mean, really every single player they added this offseason isn't really a hockey player known for like their skill or talent. They're really just kind of utility guys. Like even Ryan McLeod, he's more of a utility speedster guy than a guy that can contribute a lot of offense. Jason Zucker is a guy who I think he surpassed like 60 points once in his career. He's having a great year in Buffalo, but he's not a guy you should rely upon putting up those top line numbers. And I really think that's a Sabres' biggest problem right now, is they kind of just lack talent. Like the only way this team could have appeared talented this season is if Dylan Cousins took a step, if Jack Quinn took a step, if JJ Peterka took a step. And Peterka looks pretty stagnant this season, and I think Quinn and Cousins took 2 just massive steps back. And I really just think the Sabres' lack of talent right now is just really showing.
Yeah, it's not a good enough roster. I think we discussed that all summer, right? They didn't do enough. And the sad part is that this is the worst the Eastern Conference has been in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
Like theoretically, with a bad roster, a young and inexperienced roster, if they were even slightly above average, they would be more in the playoff race. And like I said, if they somehow win 2 games in a row, which, I mean, Montreal is a tough place to play, but that's a bad team. They're a worse team than the Sabres are, given where they are in that rebuild. If you can beat Montreal on Tuesday and then Toronto on Friday, I thought they played the Maple Leafs pretty well yesterday, up until obviously the collapse. They are right back in it, but it is a Charlie Brown, Lucy with the football situation, right? They could get right back in it and then go on another 7-game winless streak or losing streak, mind you. There's a legitimate chance of that happening again because the team isn't deep enough. I don't put this on Dahlin at all. I think they are struggling without him because he is that impactful of a player. But if you're hurt, you're hurt. I don't question his heart. I don't question his ability to want to play. If he could play, I do think he would be playing. But with an injury like back spasms, like you don't know how much that's affecting him on a daily basis. You really don't. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to say that this dude just doesn't want to be out there. There's nothing throughout his career that you could say that would prove that whatsoever. So I don't put this on him at all. And I know you could say you don't put it on Lindy, but he technically is the coach of this team. And they've shown signs that in certain games they're not ready to play. In certain games they haven't had the wherewithal and the willpower to keep a lead and sustain a lead. Like, you also need more from him. You need more from the entire coaching staff. And they're not getting it. So that's where we are. 11-16-4. I guess that's 31 games into the season. Not even close to halfway. Of course, you got 11 games until halfway. But it's not looking good, obviously. And even as I say, they could be back in it in 2 games. I'm going to bring myself back a little bit because I know that even if they win 2 or 3 games or even 4 or 5, you need to prepare yourself what eventually will be coming, which is probably not a good enough team.
Yeah. Is there, I mean, I've seen some comments too that are like, there's no way Terry flew there just to literally send that message. Andrew Peters speculated even today that like if they lose to Montreal tomorrow night, that Kevin Adams doesn't get on the plane. Like we have seen them go back on their word. Remember when they told Jason Botterill that his job was safe, and then 2 weeks later, gone?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there was more that went into that, something behind the scenes.
Like the public messaging coming out of that meeting could be different than his actual intentions.
Yeah, exactly. That could be it. I don't know. A mid-season replacement, do they make Lindy the interim GM and coach? Is it Carmanos? Like
I said it earlier, like they've got Jerry Forton as the assistant GM. They've got obviously Carmanos, and there's another guy, Jubakowski, who I've never even really heard of, who's an associate general manager. Theoretically, they would have a 3-man like team already in place to at least be the interim group to get through the season. I just don't know how much more of a leash they have, right? Like if Kevin Adams, like Terry Pegula's seemingly best friend and pet GM that he gift wrapped this position for him, didn't have the leash to make moves and didn't have the cap space to bring people in, why would an interim group have that decision? Or do you bring in a guy who's well respected that's been around the league? If it could be Ken Holland or a GM or a hockey guy or president of hockey operations that doesn't have a job right now, like why not just blow it up and start over? I don't understand what else you theoretically could do at this point.
I think we have an answer. Mark Jakubowski.
I've never heard of him.
Neither have I. Scary, crazy man. Thanks for tuning in. Every time we go live, man, I see some new followers, new guys, new commenters. So for those of you that are in here for the first time, I appreciate it. Please make sure you're smashing that like button, subscribing to us on YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can find all 3 of us on the X Twitter app, at Duane S39, at C Hurls, at Sabermetrics. Please make sure you give us a follow. We appreciate it. And please, again, always subscribe and share this podcast when you see it.
Quick question, because I think Walt may know better than I would. Like, aside from Ken Holland, are there any other names out there who are like former GMs or former president of hockey operations or well-respected in the hockey community that theoretically they could come in mid-season even that could make a change, that even us as Sabres fans would be excited about? Are there any other names that you've seen or thought about?
I think there's a few, like maybe like Ray Shero or someone like that. I just think there's so many GMs, like older GMs are on the market now that are kind of on the market because of like a failed build or a bunch of bad trades. So I think it's like kind of tougher than the head coaching position. Just because I feel like a lot of the GMs that were fired because of good reason. And it seems like a lot of the better GMs in the NHL now are some of the newer, younger guys. So it's just going to be so interesting when the Sabres do decide to hire a new GM, like which avenue they'll go down, because they could definitely go for a veteran guy. I think they could also go for a younger guy. I could see them going for kind of a mix between the two, having like a older, more experienced GM be like the GM initially, or like president of hockey operations, kind of similar to what Toronto did with Lou Lamoriello and Kyle Dubas, and have a young guy like a Kyle Dubas type younger GM be under him as an assistant GM. I can maybe see something like that, but at the end of the day, that's going to cost money, and it's going to cost money to get any experienced GM to come in here. And I think not only money, it's going to be like the owner will have to give this new experienced GM a lot of power too. Like he's going to have to give him the keys to be able to do whatever he wants. I don't think there's going to be an experienced GM that comes here and is going to kind of take word from the owner that you can't spend this, you can't sign that. I think they're going to want, they're going to want free reign of this organization, and the ownership will have to allow that.
Yeah, I like Colin. I like the idea of Ken Allen. I like Shero. Like, there's other names out there too. I mean, Kermanos is a really respected name. He gets a lot of accolades from on the outside of the Sabres organization as a guy that's, being bred to be a GM at some point. But like, to your point, Walt, who wants that responsibility of having to call the owner and ask permission? Hey, can I do this? No. Oh, that sucks. Sorry, guys. And then at the end of the day, you're the one that's being nailed to the stake. And then realistically, like Tim Murray, we took him a lot of shit. He made some mistakes, sure, but he had a pair. He managed and he managed his team with a pair. He wasn't afraid to go out there. Like, on paper, at face value, the Ryan O'Reilly deal was a great deal, was it not? Because you're bringing in a guy who already won a cup, just some great pedigree. Evander Kane, you went and found a goal scorer to play on Jack's wing. Granted, he had the issues off the ice in Winnipeg. Brought some of those issues here to Buffalo. But face value, that's the type of player you want to bring in. He's already going to have Sam. Did moving Tyler Myers really genuinely hurt the organization to bring those guys in? No. Joel Armia, no. I would have loved to still have JT Compher on this team, but I mean, you got to give something up to get something. So, like, is that the type of GM we need? And I already saw a couple in the chat too. What's Darcy here? What's Darcy doing? They love him down on Allen Street still. Darcy is a Buffalo legend. Like, I even go look back at Darcy. Like, it wasn't Darcy's fault Tom Golisano and Larry Quinn wouldn't let him pay both Drury and Briere. I'm sure he wanted to. Like, those are his captains. Like, he wanted to bring them both back, but it's a known fact that they wouldn't allow them to sign both. And then by the time they figured out that Drury, they chased Drury. And by the time they figured out that his intentions weren't to sign here, it was too late for Briere. Briere probably felt slighted. He's like, I got this close to free agency. I'm going to see what's out there. And I think he only signed for 1.2 or 3 more million, maybe 1.5 million than what the Sabres offered. Like, that was a separator between keeping him and losing him. Like, I genuinely feel Darcy Reguer would have, if he was allowed to, made those deals. I don't know, man. We just plagued by ownership not allowing us to spend money.
Well, it sounds insane to me, though, right? Like, this is a question of what, $7.5 million, right? Like, Terry Pegula is not worried about $7.5 million. He is a quite literal 100 billionaire who now owns 2 professional sports teams. I really, truly do not believe in my heart that Terry Pegula is counting his pennies like up to the Sabres cap about $7.5 million. I know this is like an organizational stance they took, that they wanted to pay their restricted free agents this offseason, and that's why they didn't spend to the cap. but I really, truly don't believe that he's that worried about $7.5 million. Like, I think it's more of an organizational ethos that they didn't do what they needed to do to make this roster better. And obviously there's the question about free agents wanting to come here and not lifting their no trade clauses and everything else related to that. You got to overpay guys. We've done that for years. Look at Ville Leno, look at Jason Zucker, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's also a discussion about what Terry's doing with the stadium, that they're over budget and they're behind schedule because of the snow and everything related to that. That also affects everything related to not only the Sabres arena, but the team as a whole. But I really don't believe that he's worried about spending an extra $7 million to make this hockey team better. And even if he did, do we really believe they would have made the right move to get us in playoff contention? Like, absolutely not. Like, there's no way that this magically, if we made one more free agent addition or one more trade, that this team would suddenly be that much better. It needs to be, aside from like 3 or 4 guys, legitimately blown up, because the core that we've talked about for years, obviously it's not Tage. I don't think Tuck is the problem, but clearly Dylan Cousins isn't working. I love what I saw from Jack Quinn last night, and I hope he continues that. But up until that point, he's been a shell of himself the entire season. And everyone aside, and I know Owen Power gets a lot of shit, but aside from Darlene, Power, and Byram, everybody in that defense can go. Everybody. So
and we're not even sure if we're going to be able to keep Byram, because from the sounds of it, he wants to be paid like a number 1 defenseman. I mean, are you willing to give free defenseman $30 million?
He's proven that he can be. I think he's played really well this season.
I don't disagree with you, but are you willing to sacrifice $30 million to the cap to 3 guys?
Hard to say, but as you talk about it that way, I guess you've got, I mean, I'm not giving up on Peterka yet, but you've got maybe,
there's no way you give up on Peterka.
No, 4 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 2 goalies that you're excited about in the whole organization. That's 9 players. So it speaks to your development. It speaks to where you are as a franchise and where you are as a hockey team, and this roster just genuinely not being good enough. So it's disappointing, but it is what it is.
And here's the thing too. We talk about guys not wanting to lift their, like, you're not eligible to have a no move clause until you're 27. Like, that's why Bowen Byram wasn't able to refuse a trade to Buffalo. Like, there are guys out there that we don't maybe not even think about. Like, you talk about, Elliot Friedman talked about, the vultures are circling the Buffalo Sabres because they see what position we're in. Okay, well, what offers are out there on guys with no movement clauses that we could talk about? I know good teams aren't going to trade those guys because maybe, they're making a run. But, we heard Elliot Friedman talk about, now granted, it's not going to happen because Vancouver's going to say no 99 times out of 100. But Elias Pettersson, he's not going to have no move clause. He can't say no. Guys like that, maybe not in that echelon of hockey player, but like teams that are struggling, that have youth, guys that are 27 years olds on here, those deals are got to be out there. You just got to be making the calls to find them. Am I wrong or am I right?
Yeah, I think there's definitely has to be stuff out there. It would always be interesting to kind of be a fly on the wall to see like kind of what these offers are that are coming in for guys like Dylan Cousins. Like, it's obviously been leaked to the media that Cousins has been there's been teams calling on him. Even today it came out that Nashville seems to be really interested in Dylan Cousins. So it would be interesting to kind of see just kind of the players that are being offered up, because I think obviously the Sabres won't be looking for pure futures. I think they'd be looking for a trade similar to the Casey Middlestat trade, where you're trading a guy for another young player. So it's just going to be interesting to see kind of how they work their way out of their current situation. But I do think moving Dylan Cousins would probably be the easiest way to kind of kickstart a rebrand of this team. I just think he's a guy who has been actively hurting the Sabres when he's been playing for them this season. And you can maybe even argue last season as well. And he's a guy who probably has a decent amount of trade value. So I think that would be an easy trade for the Sabres to win on if they're looking for kind of a quick rebrand type deal.
Yeah, and even Friedman even said, like, you don't have to win a trade. You can make a trade where both teams make out. I would say that the Casey, I mean, granted, we could really use Casey, but like, I feel we both won there. Did we not? Like, I've loved Byram and what we've seen from him. He's been our best defenseman by and far since the start of the season. Started off a little slow, sure, but like as he picked up Lindy's system, like he's turned it around. He's been by and far their best defenseman. Casey Middlestat started off hot, cooled off. I'm not sure where he's at right now, but like both teams won there, did they not? Like those deals have to be out there for players that, again, I'm so sick and tired of hearing that nobody wants. Okay, but go find guys that aren't allowed to have a no move clause yet. Those guys are there, and I'm sure they're in play on some of these teams. It's just the point is your GM seeking out those moves? Again, if I'm Kevin Adams, the only reason I'm not doing that is because I don't feel like my job's at risk. You know what I mean? Like because I've been told so. I don't know.
Yeah, I really, really do believe what Peter said, that if they get their doors blown off tomorrow night in Montreal, I think he's toast. I really do.
I hope so. And again, I went to this veterans event. It was after the Sabres lost to Utah. Shout out to my buddy Mike Carr. He heads up the Buffalo Sabres Warriors Foundation for standing and sled hockey. Does a lot of great work. If you ever had time to check out a game at a local rink, it's a good watch. Those guys, they've served our country and they skate their balls off out there. Watched 2 games down at the KeyBank Center. After that, both Ray and May skated with them. It was fun. It was fun to watch, and then a meet and greet after. But anyways, we were all standing in the lobby, right? And kind of just waiting to give him instruction on what to do next because everyone was piling out from the game. And then I got moved like this, not like violently shoved, but kind of just bumped into. I'm like, what the fuck? And then somebody goes, Duane, there's your favorite guy. I'm like, what? It was Kevin Adams. He literally walked by with his head down and said, excuse me, in the slow, he didn't want to be seen. He didn't want to be spoken to. He didn't want to be noticed. And I've seen Kevin Adams in public before, and that's just not normally his demeanor. I've seen him walk through the Harbor Center, through people, by people, say hello to people, no problem. But in that situation, he did not want to be seen or spoken to. He just wanted to get through that crowd as quickly as fucking possible. So I agree with you, Connor. I think he's got to be feeling the heat. But again, if you are, why aren't you maybe is he saying no? There's got to be a deal out there where both teams win, no matter who the player is on the roster, with the exception of a few guys that you've mentioned are untouchable. Or I personally don't think anybody on this team should be untouchable at this point. But I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, I just feel almost I think firing GM in season could be somewhat impactful because that new GM can maybe make some trades in season. But I think a lot of the damage has already been done. I think they're off season where they made moves, but they were smaller moves that just filled in roles that could be filled with guys you find on the waiver wire. So that's kind of my thing, is that they could fire him in season after they lose to Montreal. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of the damage from this season has already been done. And I think the Sabres have just punted away another season where, with just a little bit more effort, a little bit more cap space spent, they could probably be firmly in the mix of being a playoff team right now. It's not that hard to be a playoff team in the East. We just look at the standings. These teams are barely on pace for 90 or something points. The Sabres probably could have snuck into the playoffs with 94 points this year, 93 points, 92 points. They could have been right there.
I mean, at this place, last year, I think it was 92. Given how bad the East is, I think it could be 90. I really do.
Yeah.
And for them to get to 90 points, they need to play at 100-point pace for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So it's probably not going to happen. I'm not going to do the same thing I always do. I'm not going to get optimistic and excited. I am going to celebrate the wins because I think that's fun, and I just enjoy doing that. When I'm home next week, I am going to go to the game. If we haven't won a game by that point, I'm definitely going to wear a Hawaiian shirt, without question.
We're gonna do a live show from Fanbase.
Yeah. We can't bring inflatable.
You should come into town.
We can't bring inflatable palm trees anymore, but I'm 100% wearing a Hawaiian shirt. At this point, it does feel like a joke. Actually. And if they continue to lose, that's how we should all treat it, right? We're still going to cover it. We're still going to talk about it because we do care about this team. We care about the city. We care about the franchise. And I've said to a lot of people online, like, you can give up if you want to. Like, I watch as many games as I possibly can. I watched it. Yeah, we don't have a choice. Like, I'll always support the team. I'll always want to talk about them because it's something that is ingrained in my blood. Like, it's just always going to be there, no matter how dysfunctional and depressing they are. Like, if they finally get out of it and they do make the playoffs, it'll be that much more gratifying to have said that we did stick around through quite possibly one of the worst stretches in the history of professional sports. It does feel good knowing that I stuck around for the Bills for 17 years. It wasn't as bad as this because they were just kind of middling in the NFL. Like Walt said earlier, is a little bit different. You just need to get a quarterback. And they couldn't find one for 17 years. But it does feel good. Like, even watching that game yesterday, like, the biggest game in the NFL, they are the most respected and like watched team in the NFL. Everybody loves the Bills. But if you go back to 2007, like, we were the Sabres. Like, I had season tickets for 10 years in middle school and high school, sitting through 9-3 games against the Cleveland Browns in 10-degree weather in the Topps family section. Like, I went through arguably as bad of a hellscape, and all of us did, following the Bills from 2007 to 2017. So if we can get through that, theoretically, I think we can get through this too. But stay strong, everybody.
I do want to say this too. Like, you know, I don't like talking about it vocally or really just bringing it up because I hate the comments like, bro, your 15 minutes of fame is over. Oh, you're just a local hero. Won't let it go. Like, you know, I did repost my phone call from almost 5 years ago now. And it genuinely doesn't feel like anything has changed, and it only feels worse. And I didn't think that was really possible. Like, if you were to ask me after that all that spiel, and I learned a lot from that, both good and bad. Like, if you were to ask me then, would things improve or would it get worse? I wouldn't have said worse. No way. But I really feel like it's gotten worse. And I just don't know where that light at the end of the tunnel is. I do want to call out one thing real quick though too. You mentioned earlier that video you reposted on the Terry chants. That was actually from Sabres Classics. He just mentioned to me, or just mentioned in the comments. That was from Sabres Classics. No, it's fine because we get support from both those handles. So, you know, shout out to both of them. They're doing God's work out there. You know, making sure they bring us back to good times. But I do want to point. I thought it was a funny comment. I think Walt, you might have smirked at it too. Everyone watching right now should call up WG on the 23rd on Festivus to air their grievances about the Sabres since the guys on the station are in love with Seinfeld. I do want to say this because that's also all over in the comment section here and in the mentions. It's like, we got to stage a protest, a real protest this time, this, that, and the other. Like, how funny would it be to go down there on Festivus, just a group of people, and just yell with like a blowhorn up in the arena, like with a big iron or metal pole for Festivus, and just scream our grievances with this team until they tell us to leave. I think that's a great idea on Festivus because it's a Festivus for the rest of us. The fucking
same. I mean, as much as I would love to do a podcast, we do a podcast, a protest. I don't think that would ever actually happen, right? Like, there are a group of people who follow the Sabres, like families, young kids, who do treat it as just like general entertainment, right? Like, there's a good amount of people who will always still.
I'm not calling for a protest. I think it's to be funny.
Yeah, that would be hilarious. Like, at this point, the palm tree thing, I think, is the funniest thing that this fan base has done in a long time. I really do. The Palmanville, everything related to those quotes that he made, how he thought that would be received, even like marginally well, is insane to me. Like, to the blue collar people of this city, you're saying that, oh, we don't have palm trees, we have state taxes. And then you look across the street and the Bills are the best team in the league and arguably a more attractive professional sports league. And now you're preventing people from bringing inflatable palm trees into the building. Like, how did you think that was going to go over well?
Dude, and not to mention,
that was probably like something they discussed. Like, oh yeah, this will be good. Yeah. This is like a reason. Like, how could that go over well? How?
And not to mention, Hurls, by the way, if you want to make those comparisons to the Bills, they still, even throughout the drought, the 17-year, they were able to sign in free agency Pro Bowl players, Pro Bowl caliber players. They were willing to come here via the snow and the high taxes. Like they were able to sign those guys like London Fletcher and Takeo Spikes. Terrell Owens, granted whether it was a PR stunt or not, came to Buffalo for a year. You know what I mean? Like so that's not a great example. Not a good example because
it was the worst example.
Yeah, like shut up. Like, the reason this team was bad for so long is because they didn't have a quarterback and they couldn't figure it out. And then they did, and now they have an Avenger playing quarterback for the Buffalo Bills who just, does unworldly things every single time he's out there. Listen, I am in full support of any way the fans want to protest this, that doesn't turn violent. I saw a comment that everybody should show up to a game with their palm trees deflated, and then after the national anthem, inflate them, put them in your seat, and then leave. Like, and then just have that picture for people. Just that wide landscape picture of just empty seats with palm trees set them everywhere. I think that would be freaking hilarious too.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, like it seems like they wouldn't.
You can get a ticket for $5.
They wouldn't even allow deflated palm trees to enter the building.
How are they going to catch you? They're not going to catch you.
I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, it's representative of where we are. And tomorrow, theoretically, I mean, if they win, it doesn't matter that much. But if they do lose, whether it be by blowout or even like soul crushing, like give up another lead and lose in overtime, like I think there's a legitimate chance we wake up Wednesday morning and Kevin Adams is gone. So we'll see.
Your guys' final thoughts before we get out of here.
That was kind of my thought. This is what we all thought was going to happen. Of course, we were all shocked by, oh yeah, everything's fine in a burning room. Everything is fine, guys. We trust you guys. But I do have a slight inkling that nothing actually can be fine during a 10-game winless streak in the middle of a 14-year playoff drought. Nothing can actually be fine.
In a season where you started the season.
Yeah, it was to win now.
The time is to win now.
Well, I do think that was a bit of a PR stunt and a bit of a PR ploy to make it seem like it was. But in reality, if you lose to the worst team in the league tomorrow night to extend it to 11, nobody could survive that. Nobody.
No.
So I think it all really depends on tomorrow night. And like I said, like I'm not giving up, but I'm also not taking the same cautiously optimistic approach that I've taken in the past. They could win the next 3 and then they could lose the next 6. I'm going to approach it from both a fan and as someone who covers the team from a game-by-game approach. I just like to see this team put a more consistent effort on a nightly basis and put themselves in position to win more often than they have in the past 3 weeks. And that's all I can ask for at this point.
Yeah. Your final thoughts, Walt?
Yeah, I guess my final thought would be, I think just as a fan, I think this losing streak's interesting because obviously as a Sabres fan, you want the Sabres to win every game. But I think at the same time, maybe them losing a few extra games will finally get ownership to wake up and maybe make the changes that need to be made. I think just with this group, I think they really thought they could have just kept everything together, kept salary the same, just sneak into the playoffs. So I think this losing streak could be a wake-up call for the organization that making the NHL playoffs isn't easy. You actually have to try. You actually have to go out and sign players. You actually have to make trades. You can't just draft your way and wait for all the pieces to fall into place and make it to the playoffs. You actually have to be proactive. So I think this losing streak could be a good thing for the Sabres organization in the long run.
Yeah. Just want to remind everybody this is brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, West New York's premier market and tap room with over 300 beers to choose from. And check out any of their 24 beers of Christmas from their Fatty Beer Advent calendar. Let them know 2 goalies, 1 Mike sent you. And, of course, Buffalo Logo apparel. Whether it's the Sabres, the Bills, the Bandits, they have a lot of different options on there. Local designs, too. And they help a lot of local businesses, too, with their own merchandise. So make sure you check them out at Buffalo Logo Co., Instagram and Twitter. fattybeer.com at fattybeer on Instagram and Twitter as well. Thank you for supporting us on all the platforms. Make sure you hit the subscribe and like button on YouTube. Hit the little bell icon so you're notified when we go live. And of course, follow us on the X, formerly Twitter. I still call it Twitter app. You can see our handles right there at Duane 39, at Hurls, at Sabermetrics, and at 2 Goalies 1 Mike. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I am Duane for Two Goalies. I'm like, Walt, thank you for coming on, man. On such short notice too. We just felt we had to go live a day early after all that.
Oh yeah.
Thanks
for having me.
No, always, man, always. And hopefully, when are you in Buffalo next?
I'm coming back on Saturday, so I'll be back soon.
So are you gonna be here for like a week?
Same here.
Yeah, a week or so. Yeah.
Let's all get together. Let's honestly
there's only one
live
game when we're home. It's the Blackhawks on the 27th. So let's do the pregame show, and we'll do something at the game.
Yeah, cause some havoc.
Sounds good to me.
I'm in. So with that being said, guys, this has been episode 174 of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Fatty Beer. We will talk to you next time, possibly tomorrow night after the game, depending on how bad or good it is. We'll probably be there anyway. But as always, go Sabres.